Good morning, everyone. Saturday, August 13th of 2022. I'm excited. I got my dates right today. Normally, I'm usually a month off or a year off, as if I was last week. But welcome back for another family education and support group here with myself, Param, and hosted by Buckeye Recovery Network on our weekly live stream. Really looking forward to spending a few minutes, 30, 45 minutes with each and every single one of you. Good morning, Beta. Happy to have you back here. Thank you for your continued dedication and commitment to your own recovery. Hossein, good morning. Mr. Jim Shan, good morning. It's good to see the usual suspects and also everyone here who might be here for the first time. You're welcome here and very happy to have you. So quick introduction about myself as people start to trickle in. So my name is Param. Like I said, I host this weekly family education and support group. It's not just for family members, by the way. It's for also individuals struggling with addictions and their families, because I think that all individuals involved are impacted and affected the same way. Mom, what's up? Cataline, what's up? And these are. I mean, it's a great resource. It's free. It's available for anyone and everyone. Oh, Cheryl, what's up? Thanks for saying hi to everyone else. Monir, what's up? Really good. It's awesome, man. Welcome. So what I want to say is this, is each and every single week we come here and we talk about real stuff related to mental health, the recovery process, the addiction process, communication, boundaries, self-care, and anything and everything in between. I mean, honestly, and it's very interactive. So as you'll watch today, family members can write stuff and provide feedback, and I can put the quotes up on the screen and I can share what they're saying and we can have an interactive conversation. I went ahead and made a 52-week curriculum with about 20 extra topics. So there's actually like 72 topics that I came up with. Some of them are stuff I've done in the past. Some are new. Some will be interviews with staff members. Some will be interviews with family members. Some will be interviews with individuals struggling with addictions. And some will be interviewed with professionals in the field. So it's robust. It's 52 weeks long. And I figure why not start with something that we're all here so passionate about, and that's the recovery process. So today we will be talking about the 7 keys to the process of recovery. Okay. Now, one can honestly come up with 1,000 different keys, and one can come up with, different versions of what recovery means to them. And this is just my version. So as I go through what these 7 keys are from my perspective, just kind of take it in and see what applies and what doesn't apply. And if, by the way, if there's anything that I miss out or anything you want to add to, or anything that's a key to your recovery, feel free to share that with us. The guy who taught me a lot of this stuff, his name was Siamak, and his name is Siamak. And he always used to say don't be stingy with your love. Don't be stingy with your knowledge. Don't be stingy with what you have. Make sure that you share it with other people. So feel free to share it. What else we have here? Ambitious. Thank you for your dedication. Thank you. I am ambitious. It's also called workaholism, Cheryl. I am working on my workaholism. Brad. Oh, my man. What a name from the past. Thank you. I appreciate the compliment. And thank you for letting me know I look good. Been working on that too. And Debbie, what's up? Good morning. So the 7 keys to the recovery process. What you know me better than I know me is that I like to use acronyms. So I like to get the word recover, and I like to see what we can pull from that word to be able to have it get locked in our memory bank a little bit easier. So first of all, the working definition that we have here in this group, for what it means to recover is the following. So some of the older ones know this. If you're new, please listen to this. To recover means to regain something that has been lost, stolen, or destroyed. Okay? So the thing that stands out to me the fastest is the word regain. In order to regain something, that means that at one point in life, you had it. You can only regain something back that you've had at one point in life. So to regain something that's been lost, stolen, or destroyed is the definition of the recovery process. And the addiction process completely disconnects self and others to themselves and others. So the same way someone who goes through the addiction themselves firsthand looks at the mirror at the end of their using and says, I don't recognize the person looking back at me anymore. I don't know who I am. What happened to me? I don't know what happened to the things I like, the things I dislike. Like, I'm a shell of myself. Like, who is that reflection? I see a stranger. That's a byproduct of addiction. And I'm willing to go out there and put myself on a limb and say each family member here that's responding right now would also say that towards the end of the addiction of their loved one, or if they're still going through it, family members look at themselves in the mirror and not know who the hell's looking back at them. They don't even recognize themselves. They are lost in the chaos of the addiction. Family members say, what happened to my likes, my dislikes, my interests? What happened to my smile? What happened to my belly laughs? What happened to my life experience? How come I'm so isolated? I'm not hanging out with people. I'm not talking to people. Why am I lying to people about what's going on in my life? Right? So when you start looking at it that way, you realize that both the individual who uses substances and the family member who does not use substances, for the most part, that's in these supportive groups, they both get disconnected from themselves. And what they need to do is recover, which means to regain something that's been lost, stolen, or destroyed. Okay? So when you look at the word recover, and it's, 7 letters, and we're going to start from the top and work our way down. And each one of these, from my perspective, are the keys to actually successfully recovering, which is to regain something that's been lost, stolen, or destroyed, which is that connection to self and others. That's why we're here. We're trying to connect to ourselves and others. And why is that important to connect to yourself? Well, heck, man, the only way you're going to connect to another human being is if you're connected to yourself. When you are at peace with yourself, you are at peace with the world and the people, places, and things in it. So that's what this whole point is. So the number one thing when we're coming to the recovery process, the R stands for this. Remember why you started. Remember why you started. I love telling people every time you want to quit, remember why you started. Every time you want to stop, remember why you started. Because in that memory, in that moment of why you started the recovery in the first place, there are reasons to continue moving forward. There is motivation to not give up. There is the desire to recover. There is a willingness to do what it takes to get a new life. And what happens is most people right off the bat, when they get into the recovery process, they are highly motivated because they want to do whatever they got to do to not feel what they were feeling. But what happens is there's like a curve that happens. So in the beginning, people feel a little bit better. They're just like, oh, thank God I'm not going through what I was going through. And eventually, as things start to normalize and things start to kind of become a part of the regular process of life, people start to put their foot off the gas. They start to relax a little bit. They start to not remember what the pain was like when they were out there struggling, not what the pain was like when their kid would not return their phone calls for days, weeks, months at a time, what the pain was like when you had to sleep with the phone on your chest, right? So, and yeah, never forget the pain that got you here. I believe, and Jim, by the way, if you're new watching this, he's here every week, 99% of the time. Sometimes he's here when I'm not here, just waiting for me to show up. But he is a very, very effective counselor and primary counselor, and just a man of wisdom. And he's been working with me for 6 years. So I often share what he says here. And the inside joke we have here in this group is I say something for about 7 or 8 minutes long, and then Jim comes and says what I was trying to say in a one sentence, very short and abbreviated version. So never forget the pain that got you here. I believe, and I believe Jim believes, that pain is one of the greatest motivators for change. I'm going on a tangent right now, so you'll get used to this too if you're new. Human beings are only motivated through 2 ways. Only motivated by 2 ways. And I promise you, money is not one of them. Money can provide some short-term motivation, but it doesn't motivate people. Human beings are only motivated by 2 ways. Number one, we're motivated by inspiration. So you see something, you hear something, you feel something, it inspires you. It gives you goosebumps. It inspires you to take some action. Or we're motivated from desperation. When your back's against the wall, when you're out of every option that you've tried, when you don't know what else to do, you're desperate enough to take some action and change. So, hey, we're only motivated by one or two things, inspiration or motivation. I don't care which one it is. I don't care which one hits you in the head. I just hope that one of them hits you in the head to allow you to make the changes you got to make in your life. So, yeah, remember why you started. And this is, by the way, this is something that for family members, I want you to know that myself and people like me, we experience often when it comes to individuals who are trying to recover from substance use disorder. So when they come in, they are not feeling well. They are psychologically, emotionally, physically, spiritually ill. They are sick. They have been poisoning themselves with poisons and substances and chemicals for an extended period of time. Now, when you discontinue the use of that and you go through the detox symptoms, which is the substance leaving your body, it doesn't feel well. It doesn't feel good. But then eventually after time, they start to feel a little bit better. They sleep a little better. They wake up a little bit better. They forget the pain of that last high, that last run. And all of a sudden, they're going back to their old ways without the intention to drink and use drugs, but they're going back to some of their old ways because they forgot why they started. So anytime you want to quit, remember why you started. Write that somewhere. And this for family members, this is the one for you now. You remember when you first set all these boundaries and you do all these things, and they're very important for the safety of yourself first and foremost, and also the best practices to be able to allow another human being to find themselves and to become self-sufficient and recover. Well, what happens is as family members, a little bit of time goes by, their boundaries and their guards start to come down. And I'm not saying the version that you start trusting the person, that's beautiful. And that's a byproduct of recovery. I'm just saying in the beginning, you're like, we're not going to give him a penny. There's no way in hell. There's just no more money coming out of us. And then all of a sudden, 6 months later, it's like, we'll give him this $250. It's okay. Remember why you started. It's a slippery slope. Every time you want to quit, remember why you started. If your loved one is actively working a recovery program and doing what they have to do, and they're trying, and you're hearing good things from everyone involved, at that point, it's okay to help them. But don't just do it because they're asking you to do it. Don't just do it because they're asking you to do it. I don't know what I said exactly there, Cheryl, but you said exactly, and you related with what I said. So good. I'm happy that you identified with what I said. I appreciate you. So, old behaviors and habits must change. So this is when I say it's interactive group. You can see I can pull things up. So feel free to dump whatever you want to do. But yeah, the must is the biggest key. It takes a lot for Jim to use capital letters, and to put 4 capital letters together in a sentence, it means that's a necessity. So the old behaviors and habits must change before you start going back and changing some stuff around. So, Cheryl just clarified the slipping the boundaries. Be careful with that. It's a slippery slope. I'm not saying it's not okay to help people sometimes. It's a beautiful thing to help people, but you don't want to go back into that, hey, just give a little bit, give a little bit, give a little bit, because the more you give at your own expense, the more you're going to lose yourself, and then you're going to need some recovery for yourself. And I'm glad, Bita, you needed to hear this today. I'm glad I was here for it. And you know what? You're going to get what you need out of this and be able to take some action. So you're going to get inspired by this, not desperate, inspired by this to take some action. So the next one that we have is the E. So the first one was remember why you started. The next one is the E, and that's the early expectations. Okay, so this goes for the individual and for their family. The key to the recovery process is to be careful for those early expectations, because expectations, as we talk about in this group all the time, they are a recipe for disaster, right? It's because when a person stops the use of drugs and alcohol, if they've been using for 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, in some cases, a couple decades, it is a dangerous expectation to have that if I stop using this drug, my life is going to get better. It's a dangerous expectation to have, because what happens is in the immediate stage, when the individual stops using that drug, their life doesn't get better. If anything, they start to think and perceive that their life is getting worse, because all of the emotional and psychological pain that they were numbing out with the use of substances all of a sudden starts to manifest and appear and wake up, and it's loud and it's in your face. If you were using substances to deal with your anxiety and depression, and now you stop using substances to deal with your anxiety and depression, guess what's going to happen? You're going to feel anxious and depressed. And when someone feels anxious and depressed when they stop using drugs, you know what the first question they have is? Why do I even stop this anyways? Why not just do my drugs if I feel the same way? And that's exactly where you have to come to item number one. Every time you want to quit, remember why you started, right? Remember why you started this process. And the other expectations that come, you know, sometimes with family members, I've spoken to many family members about this, is, hey, and I think, you know, Hossein would jump up here and say, because he works on this every week, patience is a virtue. We got to work on our patience. We got to work on our patience. Families think that the curve of the progress of their kid is going to be very, very, very rapid and quick, when in reality, it's like, oh, okay, they're moving forward like a little turtle. They're moving forward like a small little turtle. But hey, here's the thing. Here's the most important part. Are they moving forward in the right direction? If the answer is yes, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how long it takes. I promise you it doesn't matter, because they will get there. It's kind of like if you got a little ship and the ship's in the ocean and the compass is telling you that's the direction you have to go to, and the sails are going that way and the ship is going that way. It's as good as gold. It's going to get there. That's just what happens, right? That's just what happens. So early expectations of, and also with loved ones, with their families. So sometimes loved ones get clean and sober. They stop using drugs, and they expect that everything around them is going to change. Their family's going to change. Their life is going to change. Their bank account's going to change. All that stuff's going to change, and it doesn't. Because check this out. If family members don't work on themselves, they don't change. So the beauty of this group of human beings that's been here for a couple of years watching this, and all the people that watch this on and off after it's live, is the fact that you are actually working on yourself, or else you wouldn't be here. The reason why you have learned so much and gained so much about your own self and your recovery and your relationship with your loved one is because you're doing the work. And we'll talk about that on one of the keys. But don't forget that. Early expectations are dangerous. The next one is care for your recovery. And so the C is to care for your recovery, like to really care about it. So the best analogy I have is not mine. It's attributed to the same gentleman I was talking about earlier. Siamak Afshar is his name. He's a chemical dependency counselor, a very advanced one that's been doing this for, for sure, like 30 years. I mean, give or take. And he had this analogy he shared with me maybe 14 years ago in one of his groups, and it just stuck with me. And I've shared this 1,000 times, and I don't think I've even ever shared it on this group. So I'm really excited. So he says that recovery is like a beautiful crystal ball. Okay, so I want you to visualize a beautiful round crystal ball. Okay, the most pristine crystals in the world. I don't even know where they come from, but just like one of those things that it's so expensive that you can't even touch because it's so expensive, right? One of those like museum type crystals. That's what recovery is. Because why is it that? Because it's the most priceless thing you'll ever own. Okay. Now, if you had to carry this crystal ball with you everywhere you went, you wake up in the morning and you grab it and you shine it and you clean it and you clean it. And anytime a little smudge gets on it, you wipe it off as fast as you can. Every time you go places, you make sure that you put it down safely somewhere that it can't fall, it can't roll, it can't break. Every time other people are talking to you, you make sure that it's safe from their, potential threats. When you go to sleep at night, you take a look at your crystal ball of recovery and you clean it before going to sleep. You get all the dust off, right? And you make sure that when you put it next to your bed, it's nice and safe. That's called caring for your recovery. And through the process of the recovery process, yes, the recovery process is also a process. That's what we learn how to do. For example, for those of you who work a 12-step program, when you get to the 10th step, it says, when we retire at night, we constructively review our day. Were we resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid today? Do I owe anyone an apology? Do I got to do anything to make anything right? So when you go through that checklist, it's like you grab this crystal ball and you clean it. Was I resentful? Okay, let me clean that. Was I selfish? Let me clean that. Was I dishonest? Let me get honest. Do I owe anyone an apology? Let me make that apology. And all of a sudden, night after night, day after day, that ball is the most precious, beautiful thing you've ever experienced. It's priceless. That's called caring for your recovery. But sometimes people wake up in the morning and that crystal ball is not the first thought in their mind. They get up in the morning and they're like, oh, let me go do this. And the ball's just laying over there. And all of a sudden they're late to run to work and they just grab the ball and they put it underneath their arm and they kind of straggling out the door and they get in there. They get in the car and they just put it in the seat and they start driving, listening to the radio, maybe smoking, doing whatever they got to do, drinking some coffee, and the ball's over there. And then they get to work and they go into work or they go to school and they're like, oh man, I forgot the car. I forgot the recovery in the car. You know, the crystal ball's in the car still. Like, oh, it's okay. It's just fine. And they come and it's so hot and the crystal's all messed up. And they go, you know, when they're hanging out with people, they kind of just have the ball just in the side over there and they're talking and the ball's rolling around on the table. And, you know, when at the night when they go to sleep, maybe they were resentful, maybe they were selfish, maybe they were dishonest, maybe they were afraid. But instead of grabbing the ball and cleaning it, they just kind of let it be. And day after day, week after week, month after month, that ball, that beautiful crystal ball gets more tarnished, gets more dirty, gets more stains on it. Till one morning or one day or one night, they look at the crystal ball and it just looks like a dirty piece of glass, a dirty piece of cheap glass. And they say, you know what? Why am I even holding on to this thing? Just shatters on the floor, right? So if you really take that analogy, and by the way, I swear on, and my mom's here, I swear on my mom, I heard that one time 14 years ago, and that's how much of that story I remembered. And I'm sure he did it much better than I did, and he was more dramatic and passionate about the talk, but it stuck to me that, like, if this recovery is the most important thing in my life, this ball of recovery, this crystal, this beautiful, priceless piece of crystal, if it's the most important thing in my life, how do I and how will I continue to take care of it? And I promise you this, the people that I know, like, let's just go with Jim since he's here. Jim wakes up in the morning and this crystal ball is his priority in life. And here's the thing. It's not like he doesn't have a life. Jim's got a couple cars. He's got a wonderful girlfriend he's been living with for years and years, and they got a beautiful relationship. He goes to movies. He has sponsees. He goes out to eat. He has some cats. He's got some pets. He's got a really good job in a really cool place. I mean, he's living a good life. Despite of all that, the most important thing in his life is this crystal ball. And he doesn't let this thing get tarnished. You know, he's a human being. He might have a moment of frustration and feelings and stuff like that. He talks about it. He processes it. He cleans it up. Boom. Beautiful. And if you ever hear Jim talk on a meeting or something like that, you'll realize how clean that man's crystal ball of recovery is. So the C was care for your recovery. Now the O, and this one comes actually from the recovery programs. So it's actually to be open-minded. Okay. The recovery programs, when I say recovery programs, I primarily talk about 12-step programs, but I know there's other stuff out there. But the recovery programs, they're actually their principles. So the triangle that they talk about is honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. Okay, so I'm not going to go over the honesty and willingness part. You know, we'll get into that, you know, at one point. But the open-mindedness part is really important. The best way I can break down open-mindedness is if you keep doing what you're doing in life, you're going to keep getting what you're getting. Okay? So if the outcome you receive from life is sufficient to you, then by all means, keep doing exactly what you're doing. But if what you are getting out of life is not sufficient to you, if what you are getting out of life is not what you want, if what you're getting out of life is hurting you, the only way to change that is by changing what you're doing. And this is where open-mindedness comes in. When suggestions, recommendations, ideas are given to you for how you can change the outcome of your life, in that moment, you have a choice. Either you embrace what they're telling you and apply it and see what happens, or say, no, I'm going to do this my way. I'm going to run on self-will and I'll be all right. And you know what? If that's what you chose to do, I wouldn't even care. None of my business. You know, what people do with the advice or suggestions that people like me give to them is really none of my business. And I take zero responsibility for their choices after I have told them something. And that's the beauty of being a self-aware therapist, counselor, whatever you want to call it, that understands the limitations of human power. So you could tell a person one time, two times to do something, to look at it this way. If they don't do it, you don't say it a third time, a fourth time, a fifth time, a sixth time. All you're doing in that point is for yourself. It's called codependency, actually. So the beauty of all this is, hey, man, you want to live a different life? Here are some suggestions. Here are some things that have worked for people. Here are some things that have worked for myself. Here are some things that will make you feel a little bit better day after day, time after, over time. Do with it as you wish. And again, people only get inspired, people only get motivated to take action by one or two things. Either that talk inspires them, or they get desperate enough that they say, you know what, I'm going to try this. So that was the O of recover. And now we get to the V. So, when you're coming up with an acronym system, to use the word V to find out a word that applies, that's a tough one. There's not that many, unless you're really, really good at, vocabulary and all that kind of stuff like that. To find a V word, kind of hard. So I kind of took an abbreviated route here and utilized my limited vocabulary when it comes to V words. And the V for me actually stands for VIP. The V of the keys to recovery is VIP. And what does that mean? It means that you watching this are a very important person. You know what? I'll even take that one step further. You watching this are the most important person. You are the VIP of your life. It's not your loved one. It's not your significant other. It's not your grandkid. It's not your spouse. It's not whoever the heck you're watching this for. Until you realize that you are the most valuable and important person in this equation, I'm going to say something that's pretty bold. You're not going to recover. You might watch other people recover around you and say, gosh, I wish they could do that. I wish my kid could do what they're doing. It's like, what are you even talking about? What about you? Like, put yourself first, put yourself second, put yourself third, put yourself fourth, put yourself fifth. Like, do not move on to anyone else on the list until you have worked on yourself. There's no point. You're not effective. It's not working. I don't know how else I could tell this to family members. Until you say, I am a VIP in my life, I matter just as much as my kid. And by the way, there's so many parents that have looked me directly in the eyes, say, my kid matters more to me than I matter to myself. And, on the surface, that's a beautiful thing. Don't get me wrong. It's like, oh, it'd be nice to have someone love you more than they love themselves. But when it comes to regaining something that's been lost, stolen, and destroyed, which is your connection to yourself, if you don't put yourself number first, guess what? Number one, guess what? You will never find what it is that's been lost, stolen, or destroyed. How could you find something that's been lost, stolen, or destroyed for yourself when you are looking elsewhere at other things? You're never going to find what you need. Yeah, there you go. See, Catalina is smarter than me. She actually is. And I know she's going to argue with that, but both educationally and just life experience, she's smarter than me. And she wrote virtuous to yourself and others. So that's a beautiful word. And, I don't have too many V words in my vocabulary. I just came up with VIP. It's as good as I could come up with. But yeah, virtuous. I just love the word virtue in general. There we go. I knew it. You guys could do better than I could. How about victory? Taking on the most challenging aspects of your life with focus and staying with the challenge to win mentality, mind, body, and spirit health. So I love that. And Eileen, there's actually this guy that I use all the time, which you've heard me talk about, Gabor Mate. Wonderful, wonderful man. And he says this one thing. He says that everybody that's healing from addictions has to taste a little bit of victory. Like, they have to taste a little victory. And this could be family members or the individual going through it. Because when you taste the little victory, because what is it? Prior to recovery, everything feels like a defeat. Everything's a loss. Everything's just rooted in pain and just catastrophe. And it's dark. So when you get a little bit of a win, a little bit of a victory, it's like, okay, maybe I could do this. Maybe I can do this. And so I love that, the way that you brought that in there right now. So yeah, feel free. Virtuous to yourself and others. It could be victory. It could be my VIP. It could be a little combination of all of them. And again, when you're dealing with an acronym system of 7 keys, like I said, this could be 700 keys, and it could be anything and everything. So I appreciate you guys being so gracious to listen to my spin on this. Here we go. This is a codependent statement. This was a problem for all my life, putting caring for others in front of myself. And Jose and John, I want you to know that on some level there is some honor in that, and I'll be the first to say that. There's nothing wrong with being a human being that puts others in front of themselves. However, when it becomes a habit and it becomes a dysfunctional pattern that doesn't happen like once or twice. For example, let's say one time my friend calls me and says, hey, I had this moving truck coming today. The guys just said they're not coming. I have to get out of this apartment. And if I don't get out of this apartment, then I'm messed up. I can't move into my new place. And let's say I have something planned for myself today. And I say, you know what? It's okay. I'm going to come help you today. See, if this happens once, putting something else, caring for the others in front of us, there's honor in that. It's a beautiful thing. But if I have a dysfunctional pattern that every time somebody asks me to do something, or sometimes even worse, they don't even ask me to do anything, I just go do it. And that's what happens with codependency, is like people feel that they need to go help other people when they're not even asking for help. But if that becomes a pattern, then that it becomes a problem. You're right about that, because you keep losing connection to yourself. And in that, by the way, we start to create expectations. Hey, I'm doing all this for you. You're not doing anything back for me. And it might not even be conscious. It could be subconscious. Expectations create resentments. It makes us feel like that we're better than other people, or they're worse than us, or they're sicker than us, and all that kind of stuff, in a form of superiority. In one of your comments, you talked about the ego, helping other people. You can really build your ego up that way, right? You become the helper, the person that's always out there helping people, but not doing it for themselves. And he said it was definitely habit for me. So the word habit is a great way. I like to also refer to it as a dysfunctional pattern of existing. It's a pattern and it's dysfunctional. So good insight, good sharing. The E that I have here is effort. Okay, is effort. And there's a right way and a wrong way to do things. Okay, and I hate to use black and whites, but just for teaching purposes, it helps to use black and whites, because there's 1,000 ways to do things, right? But there's a right way and wrong way to do it. So, for example, if you don't know what you're doing inside of a gym, you've never been in a gym before and you don't know what you're doing, you walk in there and you try as hard as you can on these machines you've never seen before. You're overworking every muscle. You have no idea what you're doing. You're putting on weight. You're taking off weight. You're just kind of doing whatever the machine says you do. And maybe in that process, you come out and you injure yourself. Maybe in that process, you come out and you're sore in a way that like you feel like you strained something in your back. Maybe you come out in a way that you say, you know what, that wasn't even enjoyable. I don't think I can go back and do that. Because you walked into something that you didn't have that much knowledge and expertise in. And despite of the effort that you put in, and you worked hard and you gave yourself all you had, despite the effort that you gave in, you didn't get the results you wanted. In the academia world, for example, there's a certain way to study and to learn, right? Everybody's different, but there's a certain way that has best outcomes. If you go into a class and you say, okay, I have this book that's this big, I'm just going to read and 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 read. All of a sudden, at the end of it, you don't retain anything. You take the exam, you mess it up, and then you feel like you can't do this, right? Despite of the amount of effort you put into it, you didn't get the outcome you wanted. So when we're talking about the keys to recovery, and one of it being effort, it's not the fact of just doing something. It's doing it the way that it's intended. It's doing it with planning, with preparation, with the proper approach. It's doing it in a way that other people say, hey, if you do it this way, you'll get the outcome you want. For example, when you go to that same gym, someone says, hey, don't worry about all the machines in there. These are the only 3 machines I want you to look at. These machines, one of them is going to help your chest, one of them is going to help your shoulders, and one of them is going to help your triceps. All of these machines have one thing in common. You're pushing something. They're all your push muscles. So let's just work out your push muscles. And you do it and it feels less overwhelming. And you feel like, okay, I was able to follow suit, and you give your effort and you go home, and the next day you're sore in your chest and your shoulders and your triceps, but you followed the plan. And then the next day you go to the gym, you're not overwhelmed and confused. They say, hey, this time, let's just work on your pull muscles. Let's do everything for your back muscles. So your back, your deltoids, your biceps. Let's pull everything that's pulling. So you're not using the push ones. And all of a sudden you're like, wow, I was able to work out again and give my effort. And the next day you go back to the gym and say, you know what, your upper body's tired right now. Just focus a few exercises on your lower body. And by going in the way that somebody outlines the effort that you give, it gets maximized. Or with the teaching stuff, that the academia route, the teacher says, hey, this is an overwhelming book. What I need you to do is only read the first 30 pages of this. When you read the first 30 pages, I want you to go back again and read the things that you highlighted from those 30 pages that stood out to you the most. And then let's have a discussion about it. And all of a sudden you go to class that day and you're able to talk about some of the things you captured, and you're able to use that effort in a productive way. And guess what? When the test time comes, you have a higher probability of retaining what it was that you read. See, effort is a beautiful thing, but effort in the direction that has no idea what it's doing could be very discouraging and can be really overwhelming and actually make people stop trying because they feel like they failed. They don't get the taste of victory. So when it comes to your recovery, I get it, man. Effort is a wonderful thing. So many family members have been trying for so long to get their kids sober, but they were trying without any type of blueprint. They were just like the person in the gym lifting every single thing they can in there, wondering why they're not getting the outcomes they want. So when it comes to this, if you really try to recover, like, work smart, not hard. Right? Work smart. Do the things you got. And sometimes it will be hard, by the way. It's going to take effort. But it's really important to know that the effort that you put into this is coming from a source, a reliable source, or reliable sources of people who have been there, done that, know the way, go the way, show the way, like I say every week. And so hopefully that made sense. And the last one, the R of recover. So the first R was remember why you started. The last R is to rewrite your story. I'm so big on this. I mean, this is my, every week I do this talk, right? What is this dedicated to? It's dedicated to the possibility of human transformation. That's what Buckeye Recovery Network is. That's who I am. That's what we do. We're dedicated to the possibility of human and family transformation. Like that's what the statement is of Buckeye Recovery Network. It really is. And when I talk about rewrite your story, that is the essence of that statement. See, human transformation means a new story. What is it transforming from? Well, it's the old story. The old story is rooted in pain, trauma, loss, grief, anger, lack of hope. The new story, right, the transformed story, is rooted in hope, healing, gratitude, love, communication, empathy, compassion, and anything and everything you want it to be. Now, in order to, when you regain something that's been lost, stolen, or destroyed, which is what recovery is, once you get it back, now it's on you. What are you going to do with it? Gosh, the most beautiful thing about being a human is the fact that we can, at any moment, at any given moment, we could choose to have a different experience. We can choose to have a different experience. And if you had a bad day yesterday, you can have a good day today. If you had a bad week last week, you can have a good week this week. If you had a bad month last month, you can have a good month this month. If you had a horrible year last year, you can have a wonderful year this upcoming year. If you had the worst decade of your life, I am so excited for you to be able to experience the greatest decade of your life. That is called being human, right? And it's rewriting your story starts and ends with you. What do you want that story to be? And one of the most, and I'm going to share this right now. This might sound dark or depressing or sad, but I promise you it's not if you just listen with an open mind. So one of the exercises so there's these things called corporate retreats. And what corporate retreats are, they take a bunch of executives and people from, corporations, they go on to some retreat, 2-3 days, and they sit out there in the woods and they talk and they connect and all that kind of stuff. But there's an assignment that they often give out to executives, and it's having them write their own eulogy. So for those of you who don't know what a eulogy is, at the end of one's life, when they pass away, someone writes a really beautiful captures their essence of how they lived their life, right? Who they were, how they lived their life, what impact they had, all that kind of stuff. So they tell these people that are all living to go write their own eulogy. So at first you're like, oh my God, this is nothing I want to do. But and you go off in the woods with a little pen and paper and you start writing and you start writing and you start writing and you start writing. And then they come after a few hours and they have the opportunity to read their eulogy. And there's a most powerful thing that happens in that moment is one or two things. One, they look at it and say, oh my God, there is so much in my life that I want to do and need to do that didn't make it on this paper, that I'm going to start getting into action today to make sure that one day when that comes, that paper is written the way I want it to be written. Right? That it's written the way I want to be written. Because here's the thing. When you start something from the end, when you have the ending, then you can go reverse engineer all the steps it takes to get there. Right? That's what GPSs do, right? You give them the ending and it tells you how to get there. So it's a really powerful thing that I want everyone to kind of look into a little bit when it talks about rewriting your story. And don't ever forget that in this moment right now, as you're watching this and when you get off this talk today and you move forward, that you are writing a story. What do you want that story to be? You're writing a story of transformation. How transformed do you want to be? And by the way, I practice what I preach, and I truly mean that. My family knows, they're losing their mind because I'm always in some type of a transformation contest. Right now, I'm in another 90-day transformation contest for the mind, body, spirit, soul. I'm always doing something to kind of level me up because I'm constantly rewriting my story. Constantly. Every single second of my life, I am rewriting my story. And it's always to be improve upon the previous day. That's really all it is. And for anyone here, let's see what Jess said. She's late again. Jess, you're never late. You're always on time. You have life. You have responsibilities. Looks like you got a child in that picture, so you got a lot of stuff going on for you. No need to be upset about it. You can watch this in recording, and if you write during the recording, I can still come back and respond to it. Jose said, transformation in life brings about responsibility to help and give services to others who are struggling. 100%. That is, that's the whole point. When you have something, you want to give it away. And helping others in this case is not codependency, is actually being of service. And Jess said 2 kids, not 1. So it makes it even harder to be here on a Saturday morning. Jess, don't be hard on yourself. And anybody else, let me know what you got out of this talk today. We talked about the 7 keys to the recovery process. Number 1 was remember why you started. Number 2 was be careful of those early expectations. Number 3 was care for your recovery. That was the crystal ball analogy. If you missed that one, please go read that. It's really good. Please go watch that. To be open-minded, if you keep doing what you did, you're going to keep getting what you got. So if you don't like what you got, then change what you do. The VIP, whether that's virtuous, whether that's victory, or it's the VIP being the most important person in your life. And in this case, here's a good example here with Jess. She said she's got a son that's 10 and a daughter that's 5, almost 6. Jess, one of the things that I was talking about the recovery process was regardless of how much you love your son and your daughter, and I know for a fact that you do, is you always got to remember that if you're trying to recover, you got to first and foremost put yourself even in front of those two. You know how much it takes for a man to tell a woman to put yourself above a woman who doesn't even know, to put yourself above your children as the most important person in the world, because then and only then will you have a chance to be the best version of yourself, the version that you want them to experience. So sorry for using you as an example, but you just were so gracious to share all that info. Jim, you're very welcome. My pleasure. Thank you also for your contribution. And then Cheryl said, as always, I appreciate you and the information and knowledge you share. Thank you very much, Cheryl. It wouldn't make sense if you weren't here. Hossein, thanks, Paramjam. Wonderful, great session as always. Thank you. I'll talk to you tomorrow sometime after 3 p.m., I'm assuming. And Eileen, thank you, Param. Another powerful session. Thank you so much for being here. And everyone else who didn't write anything, I love and appreciate you. We'll be back same time, same place with my 52-week curriculum. And by the way, I say it every week. If you have any topics, let me know. I promise I'll throw them in there. And I'll see you guys soon. Have a wonderful weekend, everyone. Appreciate it.